Good morning, Frederick County and Virginia. This is Dana B. and Scotty S. and Charlie M. We are the 3% from Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. And as you know, we try to bring you some of the greatest and most neatest content on current events and what's actually going on, not only in our county, but what's going around the world and what's happening with different people that we get the opportunity to run into. We run into a lot of patriots that really care an awful lot about this country. And we got some really great guests this morning that Charlie and Scott and I are going to interview, and we're going to have a lot of fun with. But I want you to seriously take this to heart because this really puts our whole Constitution together. This lets people know what has actually happened to us and our constitutional rights and our Bill of Rights, and what can happen to you if we don't do this right and we don't take this country back. We have one shot, folks. We have one shot. Do not take any of this for granted. But before we get started, and I turn it over to Charlie, I want to tell you a little bit quickly about Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. We are a 508c1a nonprofit. Okay. We don't make anything. And what we do, we try to make sure that we get out there to everybody else that needs help. We do have 7 ministries, and we're looking for people that are willing to join us in our fight to save this country. So I'll just hit the 7 ministries real quick. We have our educational ministry. So today, this will be very educational and spiritual. We are a Christian organization. We have our spiritual ministry. We have our Constitution ministry. I know we're going to touch on that today. We have our civil defense ministry. We want people to be able to protect themselves and their friends and their neighbors. We also have our Constitution ministry, a preparedness ministry. We want to make sure that people have food, water, know how to be able to take care of themselves if the grid were to go down, and they can help other people. And then we have our community ministry where we can get out there and we can help people that are struggling and may need some help. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the last almost 4 years. We also, as we go along, we've done 8 Wake Up Winchester Health and Freedom Conferences. So if you go to our YouTube channel, which is Mountain Patriots, or if you go to our Rumble channel, which is Mountain_Patriots, you'll also find all of the different content that we've put out there to make sure that people know how to do everything from save eggs and milk to vaccines, to holistic medicine, to constitutions, to child trafficking. So we want to make sure that we get as much information out there as we can. So today we have our special guests and really good friends of ours. My wife and I, Barbara, have gotten a chance to know these young folks. This is Lieutenant Commander Tom and Sharon Caldwell. And these folks were J6 folks that got wrapped up into a system of just absolute injustice. And we asked them to come on today and share their story because our country is too important and this can happen to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank my co-chair here, Charlie, for the 3%. Bear with him, folks, and I need some prayers for Charlie. As you all know, or most of you know, he did have problems with his throat, with some throat cancer. He went through 6 weeks of radiation. We tried to help Charlie as best as we can. So if his voice gets a little raspy, he'll pass it back over to me to help answer some questions. So just wanted to let you know, so in case you didn't have had a little problem hearing him, that please say a prayer for our great friend and brother Charlie. So without any further ado, Charlie, I'm turning it over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Dana. It helps for me to be looking down when I talk, because when I look up, it doesn't work. So that's what I'm going to be doing mostly. Tom and Sharon, thanks for being willing to share what you've experienced with us and help us to understand what's going on. We really appreciate your time. And Tom, we want to thank you for your service. You spent almost 20 years in the Navy, and I also understand that you work for the Naval Intelligence Center. So you have an interesting background, and we also know that you've been put through the mill with the FBI and the deep state. But before we get to the meat of your book, which you have a book which we'll tell folks about, um, would you please tell us a little bit about your background, both of you, before J6, and then we'll dive into the book and your experience.
Certainly. And it's a pleasure to be here with Mountain Patriots. I'm a proud American and a Virginian. Sharon and I live on the generational farm upon which I grew up. I work these fields with my sainted mother and father and my widowed sister. I often say, hey, I joined the Navy to see the world. I saw it. They shot at me. I didn't like it. I came back to the farm. But I toured the world. They sent me places I didn't want to go, and I couldn't come back when I was ready. The way I got into the Navy was we didn't have much money, of course, scratching it out as farmers here. So I did manage to win an ROTC scholarship, a Navy scholarship coming out of Clark County High School in 1972. I'm a proud graduate of the public school system when they still taught you something in the public school system without scratching and clawing to make sure that that actually happens. I found out that when I was in college that Navy is actually an acronym. It stands for Never Again Volunteer Yourself. So in those days, they didn't look kindly upon people in the service. We were still getting spat upon and all that. But many of us still did love our country enough to go forward. And so that's the only big advertisement for me. I thought it was important to give back to the country. I am the ninth generation of Caldwell men who have answered the call for our country all the way back to fighting the French when we really didn't have a country here. But the Navy sent me all the way around the world, and I did kind of back into naval intelligence. I originally started as a ship driver. I served at a lot of different places like Naval Intelligence Command, Defense Intelligence Agency, and so on. Served out in San Diego at Naval Air Station North Island. I was a officer in charge of the intel section out there. I did my last three tours at Miramar Naval Air Station, Top Gun, all that good stuff, and
I
rode
have
with
been there.
the air wings, and I was very, very proud to do that. When the Clintons started to draw down the forces, the active duty forces in the 1990s, they figured they didn't need an old warhorse like me, so they let me go. I came back to the Valley of Virginia and back to one of my early loves as a kid, which is radio. I didn't mention that I worked my way through college, even though I had an ROTC scholarship, being the DJ on WXKE, WLCV in Louisville, Kentucky, also the late night FM disc jockey for what they now call classic rock, playing the long versions of things overnight by the Doors and
I love
Chicago
it.
and all of that.
I
And
love it.
so that's what I did. When I came back to the Valley, I got a job at WFTR down at Front Royal. Later went on to WMXH, was the morning drive guy in Harrisonburg for a number of years, and also did high school sports. I was play-by-play guy, basketball and football. I was fortunate enough after all those years to meet and fall in love with a former Sunday school teacher who sits beside me right now, and I got her to the altar before she could change her mind. We eventually moved back here to the farm so we could be close to my parents, and we started our own company because she's really smart. We did a lot of computer contracting with the federal government. We finally retired from all of that, and we thought, gosh, we'll be able to enjoy our golden years and do some travel. And then we made the fateful decision of doing what free people can do, which is go to Washington, D.C. and listen to our outgoing president, President Trump, make his farewell speech. That was January 6, 2021. And our lives were torn asunder shortly thereafter.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Sharon, did you want to add anything?
And that's basically it. I'll just say before I met Tom, I did have a pretty lengthy career in human resources. Worked for a number of different companies like Marriott and CSC and a couple other big companies that escape my mind right now. But and then we met, and like Tom said, ran our own company for a little while. I did also work part-time in Clark County as the assistant registrar of voter registration. So registered voters, took people off the rolls. We did everything with respect to elections, including making sure all of our voting machines were working and secured prior to the elections, and everything involved in elections and voting I helped out with. So I did that for a while, and then like Tom said, I retired and we lived a peaceful life on our farm, and then Kablooey. We've had
Great.
an interesting past 4 to 5 years. So
Right.
yeah.
I got to thank both of you. You said 9 generations. Tom, Sharon, thank you both for your service. And you are plugged in doing public service at the same time, working at the registrar's office and checking the ballots. I mean, it is so important today. And how did Reagan put it? We're only one generation away from literally from losing it all, from communism.
True.
So thank you both for your service. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And
More than welcome.
yeah, so if you would please, you mentioned January 6th. Give us some insight into what happened and how you guys got involved in that.
Well, it's really kind of ridiculous when you take a look at it, and it's frightening. We do talk about, and thank you for mentioning the book that we put out. We lay it out in the book. It's just going to drive you crazy. But the high level view is this. Sharon and I decided that we did. We
Right.
wanted to go down and we wanted to listen to the president. We had never been to a rally before, and we
Right.
said, "This is it. Our guy didn't win." And I should point out, yeah, I'm an old guy. I was in my 60s in those days. I'm pushing 72 now. And I said, sometimes my guy wins, and sometimes my guy loses.
Right.
So let's just say goodbye to the president. He's been really great. We appreciate what he did. And so we went there, and I'll tell you what, it was cold that morning. When we got there, it was still dark. I say got there, I'm talking about the ellipse for people that don't
The
know.
ellipse.
Is the southern end of the grounds of the executive mansion there, the White House, right
Mhm.
there astride Constitution Avenue. On the other side of Constitution Avenue, of course, is the long green space that leads up to the Washington Monument. So we were there with what eventually became hundreds and thousands of our new best friends that we'd never met before. And we spent the morning singing old rock and roll classics and patriotic songs and America the Beautiful. And it really was a love fest. It was ridiculous to me to see the media coverage later on to talk about all this violence and all this craziness when we never saw it. Now, Sharon and I were together every moment of that day. We saw the president. He's always late when he comes to speak, but there were other speakers, and so things kept moving. And then finally, the president said, even though the British Broadcasting Corporation
Right.
has chopped up President Trump's comments that day, and now they say mea culpa, mea culpa, he said, hey, we're going to go and peacefully let our voices be heard. Many of your viewers may not know this, but Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. had issued many, many licenses, for want of a better term, certificates for conservative and Christian speakers to make their voices be heard on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol where they had erected temporary stages. So that was the main reason that the group was going there, was to hear the other speakers that were scheduled and that Mayor Bowser had said, hey, go ahead. And the police all blocked off the roads and all that. When the president said he was going, Sharon and I looked at each other and said, maybe this isn't his last address. Maybe he's going to get into the beast and drive up there and he's going to address everybody one more time. So we did toddle down Constitution Avenue. I am a disabled veteran. I used my walking stick that day as a combination cane and American flagpole. And we made it down there. It's probably the longest mile I ever walked in my entire life. And we stopped at a place called the Peace Monument. It was originally called the Navy Monument, if you will, appropriate. And I needed a place to park my rump because I was really hurting. My back is held together with a very unique combination of screws and wires and shrapnel. And I'll tell you what, I was hurting. So that's where we spent most of the day. We're not even on Capitol grounds. Lots and lots of people came there. And finally, we heard that the Congress had left the building. This was later in the afternoon. We got,
Right.
well, okay, well, I guess they certified whatever they were going to do. And if anybody tells you that they knew all about what the certification process was and what it entailed before that day, they're probably fibbing to you because we didn't know. We just knew the Congress was going to do some stuff. They get paid for showing up and going harumph. So it was all done. And there were people up on the inaugural balcony. Now, this is the west side of the Capitol. The same place where they do the inaugurations, a very popular place over the years. I'm an old guy. I remember in the 60s, Hoagie Carmichael and John Kerry and all these people, people. And so there were people up there taking selfies. And there was nobody saying no. Pardon me. There were no police. There were no barricades. And we said, okay, well, let's just kind of waddle up there shoulder to shoulder with everybody, take some pictures. We did that. We were on the inaugural balcony, probably the shortest amount of time of any humanoid you will ever meet. It was actually timed out at like 5 minutes and 3 seconds. And then we went back down. We know this because the government's closed circuit television proves that. The same television that was not allowed to be shown to a jury later, when I was forced into a 10.5 week jury trial in Washington, D.C., where my life was literally in the balance. Now, how did we get caught up in all this? Let's take a look at a group called the Oath Keepers. Now, the Oath
Right.
Keepers are an organization made up
Very
of
familiar.
current and former law enforcement professionals and first responders. They're the kinds of people that when there's a natural disaster and FEMA and
They
the
show
rest of
up.
the world doesn't respond, they're there. Floods, tornadoes, all these kinds of things. And so we actually met a couple of these people. One of them was a person who actually served in the sandbox in Afghanistan with a Ranger battalion. Now, to me, that's a real hero. And being an old guy and understanding that Romans 12 says we're supposed to practice hospitality, I
Yes.
said, hey, if you ever come back to DC, you're broken down on the Beltway, we're not that far away. Give me a call. And so this person, a lady, by the way, walked away with my name in her phone. But so casual was our meeting, she couldn't remember my last name. But for most veterans, she remembers the rank that you had on active duty.
Is this the commander, Tom?
Yes. So in her phone, she
Right.
put my number as Tom, Commander Tom. When she was attacked, when her home was flashbanged about 2 weeks later, we didn't know anything about this. The FBI gathered up her phone, and within 2 hours, and we have the proof of this, within 2 hours, an FBI special agent who did no investigation whatsoever had a federal judge's signature on a warrant for my arrest as Commander Tom, the commander of the Oath Keepers, and the primary planner of the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Wow.
You can't make this stuff up,
You
folks.
can't make it up.
So can I just add a couple quick things? So I wanted to say that our J6 story is probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, I believe it is very, very different from any other January 6th defendant's
It
story.
is.
It's unique. It's different. And I say that with total respect for all other J6 defendants because everybody's been through the ringer on this and they should not have been. But our story is well, let me just say it this way. So the truth of our January 6th day was we went together on a husband and wife date. We stayed a couple nights at a hotel in Arlington. We were together the entire time, January 5th, 6th, 7th, together always. So I absolutely know what Tom did and did not do. So we went, like Tom said, we heard the president, went to the Capitol. When we thought the certification was over, we saw people on the balcony. We were up there for 5 minutes, but most of the time, like over an hour, we were just sitting at the Peace Monument talking to other people from all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
When we did get up to the top of the balcony, we did hear that the Capitol had been breached, and that's one of the reasons we left. We said, okay, that's enough. We're done. And we just left and went back to the hotel. So our January 6th day was very, it was a little bit bittersweet because President Trump was leaving, but we met a lot of fun people from around the country. We had a pretty good time, even though we were freezing and his back was aching. We had, it was a nice husband and wife outing together. And we went home and we really thought that was the end of it. So we were very surprised 2 weeks later when our home was raided by the FBI in the middle of the night. But one of the other things that makes our story different is we never went in the Capitol and we never saw any violence or participated in any violence. And I'm not saying people should or should not have gone in the Capitol, but the typical story is I went into the Capitol. The police didn't stop me. Nobody, in fact, invited us in. We were not violent. We were peaceful. We looked at the artwork in the rotunda and we left. But then, we got arrested and some people took plea deals. Many people took plea deals and that type of thing. So our story is different in that even though we did exactly the same things, they came and arrested Tom and charged Tom, but not me. And so right from day one, we were like, okay, what's going on here? What's going on here? So, later we came to find out all these other things. And what they originally accused Tom of and charged him with, they did that, like Tom said, within 2 hours of finding his phone number in somebody else's phone. They did zero investigation about him. So they accused him of going inside the Capitol and destroying property, even though he did not. they accused him of, leading a group of military people inside the Capitol, even though he did not. They accused him of being the commander of the Oath Keepers, even though he was not.
Right.
They knew nothing about him. They didn't know he had been in the Navy. They did not know the FBI did not know he used to work for the FBI. They did zero investigation. This was a case, very much a case.
This was a hit job.
Well, it was a case of arrest now, we'll find a crime later. I mean, it's a classic case of that. And it's horrific to think that our government can do this to ordinary law-abiding citizens. And what we
Absolutely.
have learned over this roller coaster ride over the past 4 years, it's amazing. And, and Tom, I think, does a pretty good job of telling a lot of that, of what went on behind the scenes in the book.
And this is in this book, folks. Okay. And as a matter of fact, we're going to have Tom with us in the next 2 weeks. So if you have questions, you hit me up and I'll let you know where we're going to be for a book signing and have him tell his story as well. These are fantastic people. And I do want to add one other thing, Tom and Sharon,
Sure.
because we've done a lot. I mean, we watched the whole thing. Okay. We watched everything. Now, isn't it true that you can't have an insurrection? You can only have an insurrection against a sitting president. So on January 6th, who was the sitting president? Trump.
President Trump.
President Trump. So all of that stuff was thrown out. And then you had Nancy Pelosi, and we know all the stuff. If people want to go do their due diligence on this, on not calling in the National Guard and Muriel Bowser and her not wanting people there. When you really look back over this over the last few years, you will notice that this not only was a setup, but they went out and they handpicked people like Tom with the rank and so forth that they could make an example of. And if they can do that to somebody as good as this man and this young lady are, that have served our country and done everything they can for our country, imagine what they can do to us different fruit that are on the trees. And we have a real battle to go with there. Scott, what are you thinking here, buddy? Because you've heard a lot of this as well.
I I personally had never heard your story before, so
But you
thank
know
you.
the story.
But yeah, I've only known one other person that was J Sixer, and I'm not gonna shout his name out here, but
Right.
told me, the morning he got arrested, he leaves for work, and the FBI pulls him over right in the middle of Route 50 and patting him down and cuffing him and stuffing him in the car, and he ended up getting sentenced, and he was supposed to serve his time on weekends, but the jail he was supposed to serve his time in didn't even have a place for him to serve, so he never did actually have to serve his jail time thing.
He was a lucky one.
Yes.
It is a tragedy that what they did to you. Like, again, this is the first time I'm hearing your story. It is all the things that they did, and all the countless hours, thousands upon thousands of hours of videos that they didn't show of people like yourself who did absolutely nothing wrong. Yes, there were some hammerheads that did some things wrong, but I'd go to say 98% of the people that were there were just there to support President Trump, and it's disgusting what they did, and I'm flabbergasted.
It's unconscionable. And then you end up with a whole unselect committee. I do believe, Tom, with your book, folks, you need to read this. You need to read this because this is told as a story. Okay, this isn't this happened. This is told as a story. This is excellent. And as soon as I found out that Tom did this book, I talked to him a few weeks ago, and as soon as he put up, what was it, November 6th?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, we had it by the 9th. Because we go back a few years. See, Tom and Sharon actually came out and spoke at the Wake Up Winchester about this story. We just couldn't put it out there for their safety and security. Now we're able to tell the story and let people know exactly what our American citizens went through. You watch what Trump's going through. Now you're seeing Epstein. You're seeing all of this stuff. And here's the cool thing. If there is a cool part to this, all of this stuff is being exposed on actually who did it, and it ain't us. We're still in the fight to make sure that things work out the way they're supposed to. So, folks, it's time to get in the fight. Sharon, you have something you want to add to that?
I just want to say I'm really, really grateful to you for allowing us to speak about, not just the book, but what we've been through. And
Oh, you guys are great. Good to ball with you.
Steve came out early on, as you mentioned. I don't know when it was.
The very first Wake Up Winchester.
Yeah, the very first Wake Up Winchester.
Very first one.
Right. When we spoke at that, we were still, I guess that was before, that was right after your trial. Is that
That was
right?
before the trial,
That
I
was
think.
before. Anyway, before it was before or after the trial, we were still going through it. And, before the trial, for a while, when Tom was in what they call pretrial detention, I mean, they threw him in prison for 53 days after they arrested him, before he was convicted of anything. Claiming he was some type of terrorist and all that stuff. So claiming he had, was a fugitive from justice, which he was not, which was a lie that they used to keep him in prison. And we got, finally got a good lawyer. We got him out, thank goodness. But he was home with an ankle monitor on and
Right.
with,
Couldn't use the
couldn't use
internet.
the internet, couldn't use a cell phone. I mean, all these things. And so he was very isolated and very, he wasn't allowed to speak. He wasn't allowed to do certain things. So
Right.
gradually, some of those restrictions were loosened, but he had the ankle monitor for almost like 4 years. It was ridiculous. But anyway, we had to be a little more careful even then when we spoke at your first wake up Winchester
Very
about what,
careful.
yeah, because again, I can't remember if it was before or after the trial, but even if it was after the trial, that was before he was sentenced. And
Mhm.
anything you say, they can use against you, and they twist it, and they'll carve out pieces of it, but not the whole thing. That kind of thing. They'll cherry pick certain things. We had to be we wanted to tell our story, but we could not tell the whole thing.
Right.
Now we can tell the whole thing, and we can speak. And Tom's put stuff in that book that it's we've never ever spoken about before. So
Hmm.
very thrilled to finally be able to tell people about everything that we've been through. Now we can speak freely, and we're so grateful to be able to do that on this platform and through Tom's book and everything else because I like to tell people, look, Tom had two goals in writing this book. Educate, one was to educate people so that people know what really happened to really in my view innocent American citizens, so that it never happens again to anybody else. So one is to educate, and two is to give glory to God because we could not have gotten through this without the Lord, without leaning on God. It was too difficult,
Amen.
way too difficult,
Absolutely.
and there's just no way. You would be crushed. People did, quite a few J6ers have committed suicide because they couldn't handle the pressure of
Right.
USA versus little old me. And what did I do? I walked in the Capitol for 5 minutes. I mean,
Right.
that's where the pressure that they put on so many people, it's destroyed them. It's destroyed their homes, their families, their marriages, their lives, their businesses. Some are homeless. I mean, it's a tragedy. It happened
A
to so
lot of them
many folks.
still, they are. We're working with J6ers right now, trying to help them out.
Which is,
One of them is the
thank you.
Homeland House Foundation, um, that our buddy Adam is doing a 1600 unscripted in front of the White House every Thursday night to try to get this out there because now we can speak. We can finally speak because
Right,
people are
right, exactly.
figuring out that all of the stuff that's happened has been one gigantic. I would just say what Trump would say. It's a hoax. It's
Exactly.
a hoax. And what you've done to these people is a hoax. You
Dana,
know,
you're very kind, and Charlie and Pastor Scott, you're very kind at talking about the book. I would just say this about the book. I'm an intelligence officer by trade and by training. That's what
right.
I did to serve all of you when I didn't even know you. Okay. And I've written many, many things. Intelligence assessments for the forces at sea and under the sea, what the bad guys are doing in this theater and that theater, short fuse stuff, and long-term studies. But I never had to write something that was so personal and
Right.
so painful. And I tried to do it in the only way that I thought was reasonable. And Dana, you already talked about this. Book people who have read this, who've been very supportive, have said, well, let me get it right. This is a first person adventure
Right.
narrative told as a friend speaking to a friend in front of a fireplace. And that's the
It's
way I did
excellent.
it. But let me tell you, like Sharon said, there is stuff in this book that has been actively suppressed, withheld from the American people. As they say nowadays, I'm telling the story and I'm bringing the receipts.
Hmm.
So when I say FBI agent Joe Schmo perjured himself on the stand when he said XYZ, and our attorney got him to recant, you better believe that I've got chapter and verse to
And the
make a
receipts.
I've got the receipts. I can show you. And I wanted the book to flow as a story because it is. And I've got those little footnote
Right.
numbers there where they're appropriate, but they're not at the bottom of the page. They're in the back. They're what they call end notes. So that example that I just showed you, I'll say it is from the government's own transcript of the testimony of days such and such of the trial, afternoon, page 227, paragraph 3. So if somebody says that, as they've said for years and years, when I said, I'm innocent, you're doing entrapment, they're lying. When they say he's lying, I go, well, let's just check the end notes, hubba bubba, because I was very blessed by the Lord as we were dragged through this thing. And most of the time he was carrying me, because there were times when I was in such despair, I didn't think I could take another step. But I was able to get access to all of the actual evidence and the phony evidence for not only me, the other 4 people who ended up being actual oath keepers, who were tried with me. I got access to all their stuff too. And
Discovery.
don't you believe?
Discovery.
Yes, exactly. Don't you believe that I let any of that stuff go? In fact, you get obsessed when you think that they're going to take your life. They wanted to put me in jail for the rest of my life. And considering the way they treated me those 53 days in solitary, which was as torture, we talk about it in the book, but that's only part of it. I felt that if I went back in as a disabled veteran, deprived of his medicines as I was and as I would be, Sharon and I would never see each other again.
Right.
So I was about this stuff. I got to the point where I knew the evidence, the wrong stuff and the right stuff, better than the attorneys for the other people.
You were dealing with government gangsters.
I was just going to say that Cash did a lot of the same thing when he wrote Government Gangsters. He started naming names and bringing receipts. And here's the sad thing. And when Charlie and Scott and I talk a lot, when we do these other podcasts, we talk about omission. Okay, the people in the news, first off, a lot of them we feel are CIA trained, are given their talking points at 4 o'clock in the morning, and your job is to go smash this person and omit everything that's actually true, but put in this piece, and we'll lie about it now, and then we'll come back and we'll try to fix it later. And most of the American public, they'll say, are so stupid they're not going to pay attention to it because they only read the headline. So they go exactly by what the headline says and they don't do any research. So we're begging you folks, if you want to know really what's going on, this is probably one of the greatest things that we've read to tell people how this system works. And if it can work against Tom and Sharon like this, imagine what they can do for you. So this is also a handbook to find out what you need to know if something's going to happen to your constitutional rights.
Absolutely.
But this is all about the mission that Mountain Patriots has. Charlie, what other questions do you have for Tom and Sharon?
I understand that both of you have a biblical worldview.
Yes.
How did that help you get through this ordeal?
Well, people need to understand what we mean by a biblical worldview. We believe that God is the creator of the universe, that he is supreme. And all this stuff that's going on here is because sin has entered the world. We've leaned into the Lord every single day since this thing began. And we always believed that truth and justice would win out, but we learned that that's not dependent upon institutions built by man. Anything created by man can be perverted by man and by the sin that is in the world. It was only the Lord who carried us, who was the constant. And I will say that it was during this time, the first time I ever read the Bible from cover to cover. Many times people call themselves Christians, and I always did. You read things and you say, I don't quite understand what that means. But as we went on this trek, this Christian trudge, if you will, part of our lives, it's amazing how my spiritual eyes were opened and the lessons of the Bible were shown to be true over and over and over again. And I go to something like 2 Kings, okay, where the prophet Elisha, he's run afoul of the king of Aram and his son, and he says, boy, we're up against it. We got a whole army out here. And he says, Lord, let his spiritual eyes be open. And that is when he looks and he sees chariots of fire and horses in the sky sent by the Lord. And it teaches us that God is working behind the scenes, even when you can't see what he's doing. And there was a
Right.
lot of angst, a lot of anxiety, a lot of sleepless nights. And you just wonder, you go, how much longer, God? And I should point out, I never once, and Sharon never once felt that God did this to us. He's getting even. He's trying to show, no. The only thing he was trying to show us was that his love endures. When we leaned into him, when we thought we had no faith, we got faith from him. When it seemed that it was hopeless, we had hope in him. And that's the way we got through it. And this is all through the book. And I'll tell you what, I got a word of warning for all you truth seekers out there. You're going to find out what evil looks like because I've looked into its face and I will describe it. And I will take you by the hand if you let me. And I will walk you through that attack on our farm, through torture in the nastiest jail in Virginia, and through the run up and all the dirty tricks of the government, through a 10.5 week kangaroo court trial in a place where there are no 10 commandments and no Bible upon which to put your hand to swear, to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. And then everything they did afterwards, even when we had victories in a rigged courtroom. And it goes on and on and on. How do you survive? People ask us all the time. Let me tell you about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Well, Scott, I could see Scott. Go ahead, Scott.
And I don't know, so I'm asking out of ignorance. Which jail did they have you housed at?
They had me in a really odious little corner of Virginia called the Central Virginia Regional Jail in Orange, Virginia. We found out later, we found out later through the sheriff's department that that place really stinks. That's where they put you when they really want to make an example of you. And
Wanted to make sure it wasn't one that I worked at. So
I was going to talk to you offline about that later on, if anything.
what you were saying about being carried through, I mean, me personally, I've not gone through anything like you've gone through, but having stupidly got myself elected to political office, had my own issues walking through the fire. And every time that I've always had some kind of struggles, I try and live by these three Bible passages, and if you'll allow me. First one being Proverbs 12:22, lying lips are abomination to the Lord. I mean, I cannot stand a liar. It drives me up a wall. I can deal with just about anything until you lie to me. After you lie to me, I'm done with you. And then the first passage of scripture I ever memorized was Luke 9:62. And Jesus said unto him, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. If you keep looking back and you keep looking around, you're plowing your field, you start looking around, your furrows are going to be crooked before you know it. So you have to keep that focused on Christ. And then the one that always I said all the time is 2 Timothy 1:12. For the which cause I suffer these things, nevertheless I am not ashamed. For I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. And it's the commitment to following him. And we all make mistakes and we all do dumb things. And sometimes we let situation, circumstance take us out of our game. But you have to keep your eyes focused on Christ. And what you said was just so powerful. I appreciate you saying it.
Thank you so much.
Love it. I love it. What a great little group of people here today. I'm telling you, I can just feel and for all you people that don't think that that's true, it's true. You can feel it. The spirit is there. Charlie, go ahead.
I have another comment and a question. The comment, I was impressed to see the autograph in the book, the pardon. That was great.
Pardon.
Did you have any contact with the Trump administration through this?
No, certainly not directly. And a brief note on the pardon. As I think most people know, on the day that Trump was inaugurated, January 20th, 2025, President Trump did a blanket pardon for almost all of the J6ers, and he did a commutation for 14. The commutation was very important. That was for a number of Oath Keepers and Proud Boys who were in jail for many, many years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years, 22 years. They would, if President Trump had not commuted their sentences, who knows if they would have ever seen the light of day. So that commutation was very, very important because it got them out of prison immediately. However, Tom's sentence, or on that day, on Inauguration Day, was commuted, which was kind of strange because the judge, Judge Maida, who was the judge in Tom's case, he finally went to sentencing on January 10th, 2025, 10 days before President Trump was inaugurated. And on that day, Tom's sentence was commuted to time served for the 53 days that he spent when he was originally arrested. The judge said, "Hey, you're done." And he had at that point only one conviction for one false felony. I mean, he was not really guilty of it, but anyway, it's another story. So, Tom was out of jail. Tom wasn't in prison. So the commutation was kind of strange.
They commuted the commutation.
Yeah, yeah. So we're like, okay, why didn't Tom get a pardon on that day? And so we could kind of lobby to get Tom pardoned. And what I will say, on that day when President Trump signed the blanket pardon for so many J6ers, he did also state when he signed it that some of these commutations would likely become pardons. So he stated that. He says, we're just researching, we're doing a little bit more research on some of these cases. So he stated that publicly. So we were hoping, Tom's case was still being researched. But we did not directly contact the Trump administration, but I did write letters to President Trump. I don't know.
Many other people did.
I don't know if he ever saw them. We asked many people that we knew, would you please write a letter to the Trump administration? Would you please, so we asked folks, to try to do that. We had other people, really pulling for us. Tom's attorney wrote a couple, one letter in particular that did get some, actually, I think President Trump saw it because he posted it up on Truth Social. So Trump's attorney wrote a letter on Tom's behalf saying, of all people, this person should be pardoned. And we do think that President Trump eventually saw that. So it did take a couple of months, but then Trump did receive his personal pardon on March 20th, 2025, and that's what you see in the back of the book there. So we're very grateful to the president that he did finally pardon Tom. So
yeah, but we talk about. I think that the fact that it did come to his attention again, the Lord had His hand on that, and as Sharon said, 10 days before, and I should point out, there's a difference between being found guilty of something at trial and being convicted. And the short explanation is this. Guilty verdict usually leads to a time when you're standing in the stocks at midday, as the British would say. And that's where the prosecutors and the judge stand there and tell you what a creepo you are. And they rehash everything and they curse at you. And then they tell you how long you're going to go into jail for. I think that I am safe in saying I have set the Guinness Book of World's Record mark for the longest period of time for a J6er who was found guilty of anything to the time that she went to sentencing. It was over 2 years. Usually it's about 2 months. 2 years it dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. We say oftentimes, and I put it in the book because it's just ingrained in my brain, the process is part of their punishment of you. They want to hold you down. They want to break you.
They want to break you.
Which they did, but they did not break us spiritually. They didn't break us apart. Many J6ers, their families fell apart, and that's a tragedy. But that didn't help us.
There.
Yeah, it didn't happen to us. Okay, but during this time when I was going nuts, you can imagine where sometimes you just say, okay, let's get it over with already, so we can appeal. Let's go. But you know what? That was not part of God's plan. And will say the Lord was trying to do something in me, what was true. He needed to have more time to get me to the place that He wanted me to be. And
He needs you at a certain place.
He wanted me to forgive. He wanted me to understand how to forgive. And look, when somebody has tortured you, it's awful hard to forgive. When they have driven your wife to tears over and over, it is hard to forgive. But during all of that time, many blessings came our way. I mean, plants blooming out of season, the Supreme Court stepping up and saying, hey, that thing you convicted Caldwell or you found Caldwell guilty of is bogus. Threw it out. The Supreme Court, for goodness sake. This never would have happened if I'd been sentenced right away. The Lord was working. Just like in that story about Elisha that I shared a moment ago, he was working behind the scenes. And then when the president was reelected, they couldn't wait to get me back in the federal court. We were still scared. I was scared. Maybe she wasn't scared. I was scared. because I knew that they had pushed all their chips to the middle of the table. They had to put me in jail. And so what happened that day, as Sharon talked about, the commutation again was another blessing. How the Lord touched the heart of an Obama appointed leftist judge, non-believer. I don't know, but I give all praise and glory to him because he did.
And I just really want to add one thing. It's maybe a teeny tiny bit off topic a little bit, but since we're talking about pardons and commutations, of the 14 people that were commuted, their sentences were commuted on January 20th during President Trump's inauguration. Tom has received a pardon. I think maybe one other person did, because there are 12 people that still have the commutations. I believe I think it's 8 members of the Oath Keepers and 4 Proud Boys, if I'm not mistaken. And I would like to ask for prayers for these
Yeah.
12 people, because I don't understand why they're not pardoned. And the reason I say this is, Tom and I really don't know that much about the Proud Boys case because we were so enveloped in the first Oath Keepers case, and that's all that that's all we could focus on. That's all we had time to focus on. But we know the ins and outs of the first Oath Keepers case, and Tom and his attorney have seen all the discovery. I've seen a lot of it. I sat through that as much. He sat through obviously the whole trial. I read all the trial transcripts. We can tell you, we did not see any evidence that those members of the Oath Keepers did anything wrong other than maybe misdemeanor trespassing like so many others did. A few of them did walk into the Capitol,
but they weren't charged for that
peacefully, and they walked back out. In fact, they assisted law enforcement. They assisted people in getting people out of the Capitol. They were working with law enforcement to get people out of the rotunda in different places. So, I don't understand, and I love President Trump dearly, I really do, but I need to pray for these folks that President Trump can see that these people deserve a pardon, because they really do. And as we've talked about before, there were some J6ers who got out of line. There were some J6ers who did things. They did destroy government property. They did get into scuffles. They did do things that they should not have done. That wasn't these folks. These folks were peaceful. So I don't understand, just because they're supposedly members of this group. This group is made up of veterans, current and former law enforcement,
EMTs.
and first responders.
Right.
To me, people that I generally support and like. So, and they have tried to do good things. They were there to protect people potentially from counter protesters, Antifa, and to help escort other speakers, other conservative speakers, make sure they were safe. Some of them were actually, from my understanding, working with the Secret Service. So I don't understand why they're not yet
Are
pardoned.
they still in prison?
No. The commutations got them out immediately.
Praise
But
the Lord.
President Trump was amazing that first day. He got everybody out of prison, which, I mean, almost everybody out of prison that were J6 related. And he did that through the pardons and the commutations. So they're out of prison. Thank the Lord. Praise the Lord. But they cannot vote. They cannot own a firearm. They should have a full and unconditional pardon. They deserve it. I hate to say this. I think that they deserve it so much more than some others who were pardoned.
I think that's eventually going to happen. I really do. And everything, just like you said, it took 2 years. It wasn't just happen in 2 months. It took time. And it amazes me when we look back on a lot of things in our lives. Why, Lord, why is this happening? And all of a sudden, after 2 or 3 years, you look back and go, okay, now I know why I went through that fire. Now I know why it took this long. Now I can write this book, or I can start a Mountain Patriots group, or I can help other people physically, mentally, emotionally. I had to go through it in order to be able to help other people. And I really believe there's no coincidences that we're here today. I can't wait to get your video back up from years ago. When you see the light that's behind Tom's head, you're going to go, oh my gosh. You have to see it.
I've heard of this.
I knew
we had that
Tom.
laying on of hands.
What?
When we had that laying on of hands at the very
The
first
laying on of hands. Everybody
Winchester.
came up and prayed over Tom at Wake Up Winchester. It was the first one. And everybody came up, and there's a big light behind him and everything else. And I knew then and there that, and I kept saying to Sharon would say to me, I don't know if we're going to make it. I said, Sharon, I just got this feeling that this is going to be a long journey, but he's going to get out. There's just something, and I just had this feeling this isn't right. He's going to get out. He's going to get through. And here we are 3 years later. Okay. It's been over 3 years. almost
Sure.
3.5 years since we did our little wake up winters. That's how long we've all been fighting this. Now,
That's right.
what do we do with the information and the skills and the faith and the Bible to help other people cross over into this, as Trump would call it, the new golden age of America? I mean, we're there's so many spiritual people that we work with, Christian people we work with. We are the remnant. And when it comes to the revolution, that's why Charlie and Scott and I call ourselves the 3%, because 3% of the population are the ones that really built and made and created this country. And it's the 3% that's going to take it back. That's how I say. That's just how I see it. You know, Charlie, what other question did you have?
Um, is there anything we've missed in asking you to talk about that from this experience of yours that you want to share with us before we close out?
Wow. Well, there's so many things. I mentioned earlier that this is a very personal thing, the writing of this book. Sharon told you the reasons that we wanted to write it. People said, you dodged a bullet, and the government came after you with everything they had. As Sharon
Yeah,
said, think how you feel if every document you saw said United States of America versus your name. I mean, it was so bitter. And to think that I had sacrificed, as many people have, it's not just me, my youth and my vitality and my physical well-being and my innocence for my country, and to not be punished for any foolish sin of my childhood, but rather to be accused and persecuted and prosecuted for someone else's ambition.
right.
That is a very, very tough thing to deal with. And all of us, particularly Pastor Scott, is going to understand when he sees the title of the book, The Mouths of the Wicked. All right. There is a very, I think, poignant part of my time in prison that's talked about in the book. And I'll just leave that to people to read. But people who are believers recognize that as being from Psalm 109. And
109.
because there was never any evidence introduced in trial against me or any of the other people that I was tried with, there was nothing but bile and twaddle and the fantasies pouring from the mouths of wicked people. It
Wow.
seemed that it entitled itself. And yet that passage from the Bible was very, very important to me. The mouths of the wicked and the mouths of the deceitful are open against me. They speak of me with a lying tongue. And when I read that in that rancid prison keep where I was held, I knew that it wasn't just Sharon and I against the world. I knew that the Lord knew. Why else would he open the Bible to that passage so that my eyes would fall upon that in that dim light in that place? And so when I put this thing together, I started almost as soon as I got out of prison writing this thing because we never knew when the FBI might come back on some other trumped up thing and drag me off. They already lied consistently about me. We didn't know what was going to happen. And Sharon had kept every note, every sketch, every painful, plaintive thing that I had written and smuggled out of that jail to her. And that, when I started that, it took me right to it. I would point out that one more thing I would tell people is that I wrote this in a linear fashion. The only going back I did was to make sure, hey, I said this, I got to make sure that I've got the documentation for it. And I built the endnotes at the end. But I wrote this in a linear way. And we often talk in our lives about a Christian walk, a Christian journey. And here I will tell you, when people read this book, they're going to hopefully have their eyes opened. But the man who wrote chapter 1 is not the same as the man who wrote chapter 14 because of all of the things that happened in between, all the bad, all the good, all the joy. Sharon said to me when things were the darkest, she says, we will not let them take our joy. We will not give in to them, no matter how much they push us. We're not going to do that. And so that's what I would want people to look at. They're going to see a change in me, not from being a bad guy to being a good guy, but being, I hope, a good guy who now has his um, spiritual eyes well cleaned and is ready for whatever the Lord asks him to do. And I say, I will speak at the drop of a hat, at the opening of a car door in a Walmart parking lot. I will talk about the goodness of God.
Absolutely love it. I
It's in
do want to
the
let
it's in,
folks know that this is MTNPATS. This is our website. Welcome to Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want people to know that all of the ministries are in here, and we are going to be featuring Tom's book on here. This is so important. He's given you a little bit of an overview of what's happened and what he's went through, and I would strongly, highly suggest that you want to know what's actually going on in this country from a personal, like Tom said, linear view, okay, of what happened, some of the lies, the slander, the evil that comes at especially us Christian people right now. You've got to go out and pick up this book. And we will be letting people know exactly when Tom is coming out. He's going to be meeting with us on December 1st. Hopefully he's got some books with him at the same time so that he can sign them, because I've got mine. Okay. I'm about a third of the way through it with all the things I've got. I've got all these books I'm reading, but I want people to be able to realize that they can come to our site and uh, and be able to find different things that are on here. It's a brand new site, but Tom's book is going to be one of the first things that we put on here to make sure that people have an idea of where to get things. So I'm going to leave it at that. Charlie, do you have anything that you want do you want to put in here?
um only thank you,
Oh,
Tom and
absolutely.
Sharon, for doing this,
Sure, Joe.
and thank you both for your service.
Thank you.
Scott, you have anything you want to add to this, my friend?
I just, again, thank you for sharing your story today because it's things that most people haven't heard and they're blissfully ignorant. But when you were talking about Psalm 109, my favorite Psalm is 138. And in verse 7, though I walk in the midst of trouble, thou wilt revive me. Thou shalt stretch forth thine hand against the wrath of mine enemies, and thy right hand shall save me. So, you had your Joseph experience, and I thank you for sharing it for us. And yeah, I my hat's off to you because a lot of us would probably crumble and wilt away under that pressure. And I'm glad that you all got through it and got to the other side. Amen.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you so much.
Amen.
And if you let me do the shameless plug, I'm ready for it because people can get the book at
Yes.
puffpublishers.com. That's puffin like the seabird, Puffin publishers.com. You can go there. It's available right now. A lot of people in this country don't want you to read this book, including some of the larger publishing houses. But we would appreciate it if you would take a look, and I think that you're going to find it very different from anything you've ever read before.
And they're located where, Tom?
Well,
Well,
they're just online,
yeah,
but I mean,
yes, puffinpublishers.com.
But where are they located?
It's a Virginia publishing company.
A Virginia publishing company. And the reason I brought that up is because this is where America began, in Virginia. And
Correct.
go to our website, take a look at our historical podcast that I'm not going to get into today. We need people that are interested in being historical figures and coming on our podcast and telling their story, either in costume or out of costume. But you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. That is the one tenet that Mountain Patriots has gone by since we started this on March 23rd of 2022. And with that, I'm going to, Charlie, would you like to do the prayer or would you like me to use my voice today?
Could we use your voice, please?
Charlie, I want to thank you for making it through this. He's a trooper too. I'm telling you, there isn't a whole
Well,
lot
great,
that you
Charlie.
can never stop a train. Remember that commercial? You can
Sure.
never stop the choo choo Charlie Chaplin train. Okay. Uh Tom, Sharon, both of you, God bless you both. Thank you so much for coming on here and doing this. I'm going to ask everybody to take this, subscribe to our channel. Okay, wakeupwinchester.com. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure you like this. Make a comment if you know other people that have been through anything like Tom and Sharon have been, or want to share your story with us about what happened to all of these folks at J6. Please help us with that. But subscribe, share this to as many people as you can. And we're going to have Tom and Sharon on again, because I have a feeling that we're going to be doing a lot of work together to help a lot of people out in the coming years. So with that, I'm going to ask us to bow our heads and let's give thanks to God. This was written by our own Mountain Patriot Educational Ministry, Charlie Chaplin. Okay, our Mountain Patriots educational prayer. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for this beautiful world and the country that you have given us, and the patriots who are willing to care for it. Thank you for inspiring our founders to create this beautiful republic, and please help us to keep it as the inspiring place to live. Please give us wisdom to do the right things, the common sense to judge wisely, the energy to never give up, and your unending grace in which we take comfort. In your name we pray. And we all said, Amen. Folks, I want to thank you all for being here. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. And as we always say, like our late friend Rick Choi would always say, this one, Charlie,
is in the book.
In the book. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we will talk soon. Have a very blessed day.